Hello, 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 hello. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to another segment of Divine Femininity United. I'm your girl, Dr. Bianca, Miss B. Lee, and we are here for our third chapter reading of the phenomenal book, Letting Go, written by the late, great David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. You already know on Tuesdays, because we start at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is the end of your workday, end of your day period, and you're winding down and or working with your children, getting dinner on the stove, relaxing and things like that. I don't like to keep you long. I like to hit it and quit it. Okay. Alrighty. So with that being said, you all, welcome, welcome, welcome. No matter where you're viewing from, whether it be Clubhouse or Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, all of the places. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time, your presence. Thank you for your interaction and all of the beautiful things. Okay. We're going to get started with our chapter. At any point, also, if you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, please utilize the chats. That's what it's there for, the comment section, the chat. And what I'll do is I'll give voice to your words, and then we'll learn and grow together. Okay. Alrighty. If you want to share, please do. Please, please do. We love adding to our family here. Okay. Alrighty. Here we go. The book is Letting Go by David R. Hawkins. The chapter is chapter 3, The Anatomy of Emotions. There are numerous complicated psychologies of the human emotions. They often involve considerable symbology and references to mythology, and they are based on hypotheses that are hotly debated. As a result, there are various schools of psychotherapy with their different aims and methods. Simplicity is one of the earmarks of truth, and so we will describe a simple, workable, testable map of the emotions that can be verified by subjective experience as well as by objective testing. First section, the goal of survival. Whichever psychology is studied reveals that the primary human goal, superseding all others, is survival. Every human desire seeks to ensure one's personal survival and the survival of one's identified groups, such as family, loved ones, and country. Humans fear, most of all, the loss of the capacity to experience. To that end, people are interested in the survival of the body because they believe that they are the body, and therefore they need the body to experience their existence. Because people view themselves as separate and limited, they are stressed by their sense of lack. It is common for humans to look outside of themselves for the satisfaction of their needs. This leads them to experience themselves as vulnerable because they are insufficient unto themselves. The mind is therefore a survival mechanism, and its method of survival is primarily the use of emotions. Thoughts are engendered by the emotions, and eventually, emotions become shorthand for thoughts. Thousands and even millions of thoughts can be replaced by a single emotion. Emotions are more basic and primitive than mental processes. Reason is the tool the mind uses to achieve its emotional ends. When used by the intellect, the basic underlying emotion is usually unconscious or at least out of awareness. When the underlying emotion is forgotten or ignored and not experienced, people are unaware of the reason for their actions and they develop all kinds of plausible reasons. In fact, they frequently do not know why they are doing what they are doing. It's true. There is a simple way to become conscious of the underlying emotional goal behind any activity through use of the question, what for? With each answer, what for, is asked again and again until the basic feeling is uncovered. An example would be the following: a man wants a new Cadillac. His mind gives all the logical reasons, but logic doesn't really explain it. So he asks himself, what do I want the Cadillac for? Well, he says, it is to achieve status, recognition, respect, and solid citizen success status. Again, what do I want status for? Respect and approval from others, he might say. And to ensure that respect, again, what do I want respect and approval for? To have the feeling of security, again, what do I want security for? To feel happy. The continual question, what for, reveals that basically There are feelings of insecurity, unhappiness, and lack of fulfillment. Every activity or desire will reveal that the basic goal is to achieve a certain feeling. There are no other goals than to overcome fear and achieve happiness. Emotions are connected with what we believe will ensure our survival, not with what actually will. Emotions themselves are actually the cause of the basic fear that drives everyone to seek security constantly. Man, that it is so many parts of that that I totally can see and resonate with for sure. Next section, the scale of emotions. The scale of emotions. For simplicity and clarity, we would utilize a scale of emotions that corresponds with the levels of consciousness. A thorough presentation of consciousness levels, their scientific basics, and practical application is found in Power versus Force, the hidden determinants of human behavior. We read that actually previously, right before reading this book. Briefly, everything emits energy, either positive or negative. Intuitively, we know the difference between a positive person, which is friendly, genuine, considerate, and a negative one, greedy, deceitful, hateful. The energy of Mother Teresa was obviously different from the energy of Adolf Hitler. Most people's energy is somewhere in between the two. Music, places, books, animals, intentions, and all of life emit an energy that can be calibrated as to its essence and its degree of truth. Like goes to like. The different energies constellate in attractor patterns or levels of consciousness. The map of consciousness provides a linear, logarithmic view of this nonlinear energetic terrain. Each level of consciousness or attractor pattern is calibrated on a logarithmic a scale of energetic power, ranging from 1 to 1,000. The level of full enlightenment at 1,000 at the top of the map represents the highest attainable in the human realm. It is the energy of Jesus Christ, the Buddha, and Krishna. The level of shame, which is 20, is at the bottom, close to death, representing bare survival. The level of courage, which is at 200, is the critical point that marks the shift from negative to positive energy. It is the energy of integrity, being truthful, empowerment, and having the capacity to cope. The levels of consciousness below courage are destructive, whereas the levels above it are life supportive. A simple muscle test reveals the difference. Negative stimuli, which is below 200, instantly weaken the muscle. Positive stimuli above 200 instantly strengthen the muscle. True power strengthens, force weakens. Above the level of courage, people seek us out because we give energy to them, which is power, and we have goodwill towards them. Below the level of courage, people avoid us because we take energy from them, which is force, and we want to use them for our own material and emotional needs. Here, we delineate the basic scale, starting from the higher energies down to the lower. Peace at 600. This is experienced as perfection, bliss, effortlessness, and oneness. It is a state of non duality, beyond separateness, and beyond the intellect, as in the peace that passes all understanding. It is described as illumination and enlightenment. It is rare in the human realm. Wow. And that correlates 100% because look around, just look at society. Just look at society. He stated the last sentence of that portion. It is rare in the human realm. It's rare. We draw towards chaos more so than peace. Next was joy at 540. Love is unconditional and unchanging, despite circumstances and actions of love of others. The world is illuminated by exquisite beauty, which is seen in all things. The perfection of creation is self evident. There is closeness to unity and discovery of self, compassion for all, enormous patience, the feeling of at oneness with others, and a concern for their happiness. A sense of self completion and self sufficiency prevails. That's at the level of joy. Now we're at the level of love, which is 500. A way of being that is forgiving, nurturing, and supportive. It does not proceed from the mind. Rather, it emanates from the heart. Love focuses on the essence of a situation, not the details. It deals with wholes, not particulars. As perception is replaced with vision, it takes no position and sees the intrinsic value and lovability of all that exists. Next section is reason, level calibrating at 400. This aspect differentiates humans from the animal world. There is the ability to see things in the abstract, to conceptualize, to be objective, and to make rapid and correct decisions. Its enormous utility is problem solving. Science, philosophy, medicine, and logic are expressions of this level. Again, that's reason calibrating at 400. Then we're going lower to acceptance at 350. This energy is easygoing, laid back, harmonious, flexible, inclusive, and free of inner resistance. Life is good. You and I are good. I feel connected. It meets life on life's terms. There is no need to blame others or blame life. That's acceptance. Lower is willingness at 310. This energy subserves survival by virtue of a positive attitude that welcomes all expressions of life. It is friendly, helpful, wants to assist, and seeks to be of service. Neutrality, which is lower than willingness, it calibrates at 250. This is a way of life that is comfortable, pragmatic, and relatively free of emotionality. It's okay either way. It is free of rigid positions, non judgmental, and non competitive. Then we lower to courage at 200. This energy says, I can do it. It is determined, excited about life, productive, independent, and self empowered. Effective action is possible. Lower at pride at 175. It says, my way is the best way, says this level. Its focus is achievement, desire for recognition, specialness, and perfectionism. It feels better than and superior to others. Mm, 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 mm. Lower at anger, calibrating at 150. This energy overcomes the source of fear by force, threats, and attack. It is irritable, explosive, bitter, volatile, and resentful. It likes to get even, as in, I'll show you. Mm. Then we go lower to desire at 125. It is always seeking gain, acquisition, pleasure, and getting something outside of oneself. It is insatiable, never satisfied, and craving. I have to have it. Give me what I want, or give it to me and give it to me now. That's desire. Lower is fear at 100. This energy sees danger, which is everywhere. It is avoidant, defensive, preoccupied with security, possessive of others, jealous, restless, anxious, and vigilant. Going lower to grief at 75. There is helplessness, despair, loss, regret, and the feeling, if only I had. Separation, depression, sadness, being a loser, mournful, as in I can't go on. That's grief. Lower is apathy at 50. This energy is characterized by hopelessness, playing dead, being a drain to others, being immobilized, and the feelings I can't and who cares. Poverty is common here. Mm. Lower is guilt at 30. In this energy field, one wants to punish and be punished. It leads to self rejection, masochism, remorse, feeling bad, and self sabotage. It's all my fault. Accident proneness, suicidal behavior, and projection of self hatred onto evil others are common. It is the basis of many psychosomatic illnesses. And then lastly, shame, calibrating at 20, characterized by humiliation, as in hanging your head in shame. It is traditionally accompanied by banishment. It is destructive to health and leads to cruelty towards self and others. In general, we can say that the lower end of the scale is associated with the lower vibrational frequencies. Lower energy lower power, poorer life circumstances, poorer relationships, less abundance, less love, and poorer physical and emotional health. Because of the low energy, such needy people drain us on all levels. They tend to be avoided and find themselves surrounded by people on the same level. For example, in jail. As we let go of negative feelings, there is a progressive movement up the scale to courage and then beyond, with increasing effectiveness, success, and more effortless abundance. We tend to seek out such people. We say they are high. They give off life energy to all living things around them. Animals are attracted to them. They have a green thumb and positively influence the lives of all with whom they come in contact. At the level of courage, the negative feelings have not all disappeared, but now we have sufficient energy to handle them because we have re-owned our power and self-adequacy. The fastest way to move from the bottom to the top is by telling the truth to ourselves and to others. The fastest way to move from the bottom to the top is by telling the truth to ourselves and to others. The energy levels are also traditionally associated with the body energy centers that are sometimes referred to as the chakras. The chakras are energy centers through which Kundalini energy is said to flow. Once it is awakened at the level of courage, 200, the energy centers, chakras, can be measured by a variety of clinical techniques and sensitive electronic instruments. On the map of consciousness, the chakras calibrate as follows: the crown chakra at 600, third eye at 525, throat at 350, heart at 505, solar plexus at 275, sacral and spleen or the spleen at 275, base or root chakra at 200. When we relinquish negative feelings, the energy in our higher chakras increases. For instance, instead of habitually venting our spleen, second chakra, the sacral, we are now described as all heart, which is the fifth chakra. This energy system has a direct impact on the physical body. The energy in each chakra flows out through channels called meridians to the whole energy body, which is like a blueprint to the physical body. Each meridian is associated with a particular organ, and each organ is associated with a particular emotion. A negative emotion throws off the energy balance of its associated acupuncture meridian and related organ. For instance, depression, despair, and melancholy are associated with the liver meridian. So these emotions tend to interfere with liver function. Every negative feeling impairs a body organ, and as the years go by, the organ becomes diseased and eventually fails to function. The lower our emotional state, the more negatively we influence not only our own lives, but also all of the life around us. The higher the emotional level of evolution, the more positive our life becomes on all levels, and we support all life around us. As negative emotions are acknowledged and surrendered, we get freer and move up the scale, eventually experiencing predominantly positive feelings. All lower energies are limitations and blind us to the reality of our true self, higher self. As we surrender our way up the scale and near the top, a new type of experience begins to happen. At the very top of the scale, there occurs the realization of one's true higher self and the varying levels of illumination. The main importance of this is to note that as we get higher and freer, what the world calls spiritual awareness, intuition, and growth of consciousness occur. This is the common experience of all who surrender their negative feelings. They become more and more conscious. That which is impossible to see or experience at lower levels of consciousness becomes self-evident and stunningly obvious at higher levels. That is true. Next section, understanding emotions. According to scientific findings, all thoughts are filed in the mind's memory bank under a filing system based upon the associated feeling and its finer gradations. They are filed according to feeling tone, not fact. Consequently, there is a scientific basis for the observation that self-awareness is increased much more rapidly by observing feelings rather than thoughts. The thoughts associated with each one feeling may literally run into the thousands. It's true. The understanding of the underlying emotion and its correct handling is therefore more rewarding and less time consuming than dealing with one's thoughts. In the beginning, if one is unfamiliar with the whole subject of feeling, it is often advisable to begin merely by observing them without any intentions of doing anything about them. I agree with that. It's sitting in the feeling, allowing the feeling. Because through that, you can then ask, like you stated, what for? What am I feeling this for? Why did this trigger me? Getting to the bottom. That way you can actually identify the seed of the feeling as opposed to just focusing on the surface. So I understand it. In this way, some clarifications will occur about the relationship between feelings and thoughts. After there is more familiarity, some experimentation can then occur. For instance, certain areas of thoughts that tend to recur can be set aside and the feeling associated with them identified. The feeling can then be worked with by first accepting that it is there without resisting it or condemning it. And then one begins to empty out the energy of the feeling directly by letting it be what it is until it runs out. Somewhat later, the former thoughts can now be looked at and their character will be observed to have changed. If the feeling has been totally surrendered and let go, usually all thoughts associated with it will have disappeared entirely and been replaced by a concluding thought which handles the matter quickly. Absolutely. For example, there was a case of a man who misplaced his passport shortly before going to a foreign country. As the scheduled date of departure drew closer and closer, his inner panic mounted. His mind raced wildly, trying to think where the passport could have been misplaced. He searched high and low. He tried various mental tricks to no avail. He berated himself. How could I have been so stupid as to lose a passport? Now there isn't time to get another one. As the fateful day approached, he faced a real dilemma. No passport, no trip. Missing the trip had a lot of negative consequences because it was both business and pleasure, and it would have created a difficult situation. Finally, he remembered to do the letting go technique. He sat down and asked himself, what is the basic feeling that I'm feeling I've been ignoring? To his surprise, the basic feeling that came up was grief. The grief was associated with not wanting to be separated from someone he dearly loved. There was also an associated fear of loss of the relationship, or at least the weakening of it due to his absence. As he let go of the grief and the associated fear, he suddenly felt at peace about the matter. He also concluded that if the relationship couldn't handle a 2-week absence, it wasn't worth all that much anyway. Hello, somebody. So there was really nothing at risk. As soon as he felt at peace, he instantly remembered where the passport was. In fact, it was in a place so simple and obvious that only unconscious blocking could explain why he had not remembered it. Needless to say, all of the thousands of thoughts about the missing passport, the failed trip, and the potential consequences instantly disappeared. His emotional state became one of gratitude and happiness instead of frustration. That's it. That's it right there. Letting go can be very useful in everyday life situations, but its use in life crisis can be crucial in preventing and alleviating large amounts of suffering. In a life crisis, here is usually an overwhelm of emotion. The crisis has tapped into one of our major areas of suppressed or repressed feelings. In this situation, the problem is not one of identifying the emotion, but how to handle the overwhelm. Next section, handling emotional crises. Because this is a very difficult problem for most people, some details are needed. There are several techniques to help move through emotional disaster much more quickly and with a better end result than allowing it to run out on its own. Recall the usual mechanisms that the mind consciously uses to handle emotions, which are suppression or repression, expression, and escape. These are delete, deleterious only when they are used without conscious intent. In an overwhelm, it is often advisable to use utilize them, but only so consciously. The purpose of this maneuver is to reduce the sheer overwhelming quantity of the emotion itself so that it can be disassembled and let go in bits and pieces. This process is described below. Thus, in this case, it is all right consciously to push away as much of the emotion as we are capable of at the moment. The emotion can be reduced in intensity by sharing the feeling with close friends or mentors. By merely expressing the feeling, some of the energy behind it is reduced. It is also all right in this circumstance consciously to utilize escape mechanisms such as going in a social situation to get some distance from the upset, playing with the dog, watching television, going to the movies, playing music, making love, or whatever one's habit is under the circumstances. When the feeling has been reduced in its sheer quantity and intensity, it is best to start letting go of small aspects of the situation rather than the overall situation and the accompanying emotion itself. To illustrate this point, let's take the example of a man who loses his job after many years with a company and is now in an overwhelm of despair. By utilizing the three mechanisms already described, some of the emotion can be reduced. What he can look at then are some of the small trivia about the job. For instance, could he let go of wanting to have lunch where he always had lunch with his business colleagues? Could he let go of wanting to park his car in the parking space he always had in the past? Could he let go of wanting to ride up in the same elevator? Could he let go of the attachment to his desk? Could he let go of the attachment to the secretary and her friendliness towards him? Could he let go of the attachment to his computer? Could he let go of seeing the same boss every day? Could he let go of his feeling of familiarity with the background noises in the office? The purpose of surrendering these smaller aspects of losing a job, which may seem trivial, is that he gets the mind into letting go mode. The letting go mode takes us up the level of courage. The negative feelings have been acknowledged and worked through. Consequently, they've lost their charge. Suddenly, there is the awareness that we have the courage to face the situation, recognize our feelings, and to do something about it. As the trivia are surrendered curiously, the main event becomes less and less oppressive. The reason for the phenomenon is that when we use the mechanism of surrender on one emotion, we are surrendering on all emotions at the same time. It is as though all emotions have the same underlying energy, so that to surrender in one direction surrenders feelings which appear on the surface to be in an opposite direction. This is a matter of clinical experience. It must be tried personally in order to believe it. After utilizing the above four methods, suppression, expression, escape, surrender of smaller aspects, a fifth now becomes apparent. Every strong emotion is really a composite of a number of subsidiary emotions, and the total emotional complex can be disassembled. Thus, for instance, the man who has lost his job initially has an overwhelming feeling of despair. But as he begins to surrender around the periphery, and as he diminishes his overwhelm through consciously utilizing escape, suppression, and expression, he now realizes that there is also anger. He sees that the anger is associated with pride. There's a lot of anger in the form of resentment. There is self-invalidation, which is a form of anger expressed against himself. There's also considerable fear. Thus, these associated emotions can now be addressed directly. For instance, he can start letting go of the fear that he won't find another job. When that fear is acknowledged and let go, all of the alternative possibilities that exist will become suddenly apparent to him. And as he surrenders pride, he will quickly see that he is not faced with economic disaster as he had thought. Thus, as the disassembled emotion complex is taken apart into its component parts, each component part now has less energy and can be surrendered individually. I understand what he's doing here. Absolutely. As we come out of the overwhelm, it will be remembered that a certain portion of the emotion was purposely suppressed or escaped. It can now be re examined so that it no longer does residual harm, such as ending up in bitterness, unconscious guilt, or lower self esteem. self-esteem. Fragments of the emotional complex may recur for a period of time, even years. However, forgive my dog, because they are small fragments, each can be handled as it arises. At least the crisis situation will have been passed through safely and consciously. Handling a crisis from the emotional rather than the intellectual level will shorten its duration dramatically. In the case of someone who loses a job, handling it from the intellectual level will produce thousands of thoughts and hypothetical, forgive me for the tongue twister, hypothetical scenarios. The person suffers through many sleepless nights due to the racing thoughts after the situation as the mind reviews it over and over again. That is true. All of this is fruitless. Until the underlying emotion is surrendered, the thoughts will be engendered endlessly. We all know of people who have had an emotional crisis many years ago and to this day have not recovered. Absolutely. It has totally colored their life, and they have paid a big price for their lack of knowledge in handling the underlying emotions. Absolutely. There are numerous benefits to handling the life crisis successfully. For one thing, the amount of suppressed or repressed emotion is now much less. The crisis has forced it up to be relinquished, and therefore the amount that is left in the reservoir is much less. There is a greater feeling of self-esteem and confidence because there is the awareness that one can survive and handle whatever life will bring. There is an overall reduction of the fear of life, a greater feel of mastery, greater compassion for the suffering of others, and an increased ability to help them through similar circumstances. Paradoxically, after a life crisis, there often is a period of variable duration of peace and calmness, sometimes approaching the level of mystical experience. The dark night of the soul frequently precedes states of heightened awareness. It's so true. One of the best known examples of this paradox is illustrated by persons who have had near death experiences. There are now many books on the subject that reveal a certain commonality. Once the worst of all possible fears, the dread and shock of death, has been faced, it is superseded by a profound sense of serenity, peace, oneness, and immunity from fear. Many such persons develop extraordinary abilities, become healers, develop psychic awareness, and advanced states of spiritual illumination. They experience major leaps in growth and the sudden appearance of new talents and capacities. Thus, every life crisis carries within it the chemicals of a reversal, a renewal, an expansion, a leap in consciousness, and letting go of the old and a birth of the new. 100%. And I resonate with that personally as I experienced NDA, near death experience back in 2011. In fact, I left my body 3 times back to back. So, and ever since then, it has been pum pum pum, spiritually, clarity, gifts, spiritual gifts, all types of stuff. Yeah, man, it's been something. Dreams and as they say, downloads and all of the clairs. If you're aware of the clairs, I'm proficient in almost all of them. As a result, I'm talking about is man, and I'm grateful, and I am grateful, and I because of that, I absolutely have no fear of death because I've already experienced the level of peace. It's a there's such a warmth, a oneness, um, a serenity, a love, um, and it's home. You know what I'm saying? So to know that that's what home feels like, I'm not afraid of going home at all. Not at all. 100%. Okay, next section, healing the past. When we look at our lives, we will see the residual of past life crises, which are still unresolved. Thoughts and feelings about the events tend to occur and color our perception. And we will note that they have disabled us in certain areas of life. At that point, it is wise to ask ourselves if it is worth paying the continual cost. Now that we have some mechanisms by which to handle these residuals, they can be uncovered. The residual feelings can be investigated and let go of so that a healing can take place. This brings us to another emotional healing technique that becomes powerful once the major event has passed. That is to place the event in a different context, to see it from a different perspective, and to hold it in a different paradigm with a different significance and meaning. It is said that most people spend their lives regretting the past and fearing the future. Therefore, they are unable to experience joy in the present. Many of us have assumed that this is our human fate, our lot, and the best that we can do. Okay, my phone was ringing. And the best that we can do is grin and bear it. Philosophers have sometimes made hay out of this negativistic, pessimistic approach and developed whole systems of nihilism. These philosophers, some of whom have become celebrated over the years, are obviously mere victims of painful emotions that they did not handle and which triggered endless intellectualization and elaboration. Some spent their entire lifetime constructing sophisticated intellectual systems to justify what is glaringly obvious as a simple suppressed emotion. See a lot of that on social media. We see a lot of that with these self-proclaimed gurus. Okay, but I digress. some of the, some of the most, some of the most. Hold on one second. Okay, somebody is tapping me on Clubhouse. Alrighty, one of the most effective tools for handling the past is the creation of a different context. What this means is that we will give it a different meaning. We take on a different attitude about the past difficulty or trauma, and we acknowledge the hidden gift in it. The value of this technique was first recognized in psychiatry by Viktor Frankl. He explained the approach, which is called the logotherapy. In his famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, his clinical and personal experience of it demonstrated that emotional events and traumatic occurrences will change considerably and be healed if a new meaning is placed around them. Frankel told of his own experience in the Nazi concentration camps, wherein he came to see his physical and psychic suffering as an opportunity to achieve inner triumph. So that's how he okay. That to me, it's like alchemy almost. He says everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, Frankel stated. He recontextualized the horrific circumstances to hold profound meaning for the human spirit. Every life experience, no matter how tragic, contains a hidden lesson. That's true. When we discover and acknowledge the hidden gift that is there, a healing takes place. In the example of a man who lost his job after some time had passed, he looked back and saw that his former job was stunting, that he had been in a rut. Frankly, the job had given him an ulcer. Prior to losing the job, he had seen only the pleasures from it. Once outside of the situation, he began to see the cost that he had been paying physically, mentally, and emotionally. After losing the job, he was open to discovering new abilities and new talents. In fact, he began a new, more promising career. So, life events are opportunities to grow, expand, experience, and develop. In some cases, it seems in retrospect that there was actually this unconscious purpose behind the event, as though our unconscious knew that something important had to be learned, and painful as it was the only way it could be brought into experience. This is part of the psychology of the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who concluded after a lifetime of study that there is an inborn drive in the unconscious towards wholeness, completeness, and realization of the higher self, and that the unconscious will devise the ways and means of bringing this about, even if they are traumatic to the conscious mind. Mm. Jung also said that in the unconscious, there was an aspect of ourselves called the shadow. The shadow is all the repressed thoughts, feelings, and concepts about ourselves that we do not want to face. One benefit of a crisis is that it often brings us into familiarity with our shadow. It makes us more human and more whole to realize what we share with all of humanity. All the stuff that we thought they were guilty of is equally in ourselves. Thus, when it is brought up to conscious awareness, acknowledged, and surrendered, it no longer unconsciously runs us. Once the shadow has been acknowledged, it loses its power. All that is necessary is merely to recognize that we have certain forbidden impulses, thoughts, and feelings. Now they can be handled with a so what? And that is a piece for just that question, so what? So what? Passing through a life crisis then makes us more human, more compassionate, more accepting and understanding of ourselves and others. We no longer have to indulge in making others wrong or making ourselves wrong. Handling an emotional crisis leads to greater wisdom and results in lifetime benefits. Fear of life is really the fear of emotions. It is not the fact that we fear, but our feelings about them. It's not the facts that we fear, but our feelings about them. Okay. Once we have mastery over our feelings, our fear of life diminishes. We feel a greater self confidence and we are willing to take greater chances because we now feel that we can handle the emotional consequences, whatever they may be. Because here, because fear is the basis of all inhibitions, mastery over fear means the unblocking of whole avenues of life experience that previously had been avoided. Thus, the man who successfully handles the crisis of losing his job will never again experience the same fear. That's right. He will, therefore, be more creative on the next job, willing to take the necessary risks to make it a success. He begins to see how that haunting fear of job loss had severely limited his performance in the past, made him fearful and cautious, and cost him his self-esteem due to his kowtowing and compliance with his superiors. I've never seen that word before. Kowtowing. Okay. One benefit from a life crisis is greater self awareness, it's true. The situation is overwhelming, and we are forced to stop all of our diversionary games. Take a good look at our own life situation and reevaluate our beliefs, goals, values, and life direction. It is an opportunity to reevaluate and let go of guilt. It is also an opportunity for a total shift in attitude. Life crises, as we pass through them, confront us with polar opposites. Shall we hate or forgive that person? Shall we learn from this experience and grow, or resent it and become bitter? Do we choose to overlook the other person's shortcomings and our own, or instead do we resent and mentally attack them? Shall we withdraw from a similar situation in the future with greater fear, or shall we transcend this crisis and master it once and for all? Do we choose hope or discouragement? Can we use the experience as an opportunity to learn how to share, or shall we withdraw into a shell of fear and bitterness? Every emotional experience is an opportunity to go up or down. Which do we choose? That is the confrontation. We have the opportunity to choose whether we want to hang on or let go of emotional upsets. We can look at the cost of hanging on to them. Do we want to pay the price? Are we willing to accept the feelings? We can look at the benefits of letting go of them. The choice we make will determine our future. What kind of a future do we want? Will we choose to be healed, or will we become one of the walking wounded? Man. In making this choice, it is well to look at the payoff we get from hanging on to the residuals of a painful experience. What are the satisfactions we are getting? How little are we willing to settle for? Anger, hatred, self pity, resentments, they all have their cheap little payoff, that little inner satisfaction. Let's not pretend that it's not there. There is a weird, quirky pleasure when we hang on to pain. It certainly satisfies our unconscious need for the alleviation of guilt through punishment. We get to feel miserable and rotten. The question then arises, but for how long? Take, for example, a man who had not spoken to his brother for 23 years. Neither of them could remember what the incident was about. It had been long forgotten, but they were in the habit of not speaking. And so for 23 years, they paid the price of missing each other's company, affection, togetherness in family matters. and all the shared experiences and love they could have had. When the men learned about the mechanism of surrender, he began to let go of his feelings about his brother. Suddenly, he broke out in tears of grief, realizing all that had been lost over the years. By forgiving his brother, he triggered a similar response in his brother, and the two were reunited. Then one of the brothers flashed back on the incident. It had been an argument over a pair of tennis shoes. Over one pair of tennis shoes, they had paid a price extending over 23 years. Had the man not learned the technique of letting go, he might well have gone to his grave with the same resentment. So the question is, how long do we want to go on suffering? When are we willing to give it up? When is enough enough? The part of us that wants to cling to negative emotions is our smallness. It is the part of us that is mean, petty, selfish, competitive, cheap, conniving, mistrusting, vindictive, judgmental, diminished, weak, guilty, ashamed, and vain. It is this little energy. It has little energy. It is depleting, demeaning, and leads to the lowering of self respect. It is a small part of us that accounts for our own self hatred, unending guilt, and seeking for punishment, sickness, and disease. Is that the part that which we want to identify? Is that the part we want to energize? Is that the way we want to see ourselves? Because if that's the way we see ourselves, that's the way others will see us. The world can only see us as we see ourselves. Are you willing to pay those consequences? If we see ourselves as cheap and petty, it's unlikely that we'll be at the top of the company list for a raise. The price of holding on to smallness can be demonstrated with muscle testing. The procedure is fairly simple. Hold in mind a notice, wait, hold in mind, okay, I skipped the sentence. Hold in mind a mean, petty thought and have someone press down on your arm while you resist. Notice the effect. He went over this in Power versus Force. Now choose the exact opposite view. Picture yourself as being generous, forgiving, loving, and experiencing your inner greatness. Instantly, there will be an enormous increase in muscle strength, indicating a surge of positive bioenergy. Smallness brings weakness, sickness, disease, and death. Do you really want that? Letting go of negative feelings can be accompanied by another very healthy maneuver, which will greatly assist your inner transformation, and that is to stop resisting the positive emotions. Next section, enhancing positive emotions. The corollary to letting go of negative feelings is to stop resisting the positive ones. Everything in the universe has its opposite. Therefore, in the mind, every negative feeling has its counterpart between smallness and greatness, whether we are constantly aware of its existence at any given moment or not. A good and very illuminating exercise is to sit down and look at the feeling that is directly opposite the negative one that we are experiencing and begin to let go, resisting it. Let's say, for instance, that a friend's birthday is coming up and we are feeling resentful and stingy. Therefore, we just can't seem to get out to shop for a present, and the day is getting closer. The exact opposite feelings are those of forgiveness and generosity. We just start looking for the feeling of forgiveness within ourselves and stop resisting it. As we keep letting go of our resistance to being a forgiving person, it is often surprising that it will come up with a surge. We will begin to recognize that part of our nature has always been willing and wanting to forgive, but we didn't dare chance it. We thought we might appear foolish. We thought we were punishing the other person by holding the resentment, but we have actually been suppressing love. In the beginning, we may not consciously feel this specifically about our friend, but we will begin to notice that we do have this aspect to our personality. As we keep surrendering our resistance to love, we will notice that within ourselves, there is something that wants to express itself through sharing and giving, letting the past go and burying the hatchet. There is a desire to make a friendly gesture. We want to heal the separation, to repair the wound, to make good the wrong, to express gratitude, and to take a chance on being thought a fool. The purpose of this exercise is to locate within ourselves that which can only be described as greatness. Greatness is the courage to overcome obstacles. It is the willingness to move to a higher level of love. It is the acceptance of others' humanness and having a compassion for their suffering by putting ourselves in their shoes. Out of the forgiveness of others comes self forgiveness and the relief of guilt. The real payoff we get is when we let go of our negativity and choose to be loving. We are the ones who benefit. We are the ones who gain from the real payoff. With this increased awareness of who we really are comes the progressive invulnerability to pain. Once we compassionately accept our own humanness and that of others, we are no longer subject to humiliation, for true humility is a part of greatness. Out of the recognition of who we really are comes the desire to seek that which is uplifting. Out of it arises a new meaning and context for life. When that inner emptiness, due to lack of self worth, is replaced by true self love, self respect, and esteem, we no longer have to seek it in the world, for that source of happiness is within ourselves. It dawns on us that it cannot be supplied by the world anyway. No amount of riches can compensate for an inner feeling of poverty. Wow. We all know of the many multimillionaires who try to compensate for their inner sense of hollowness and lack of inner worth. Once we have contacted this inner higher self, this inner greatness, this inner completion, contentment, and true sense of happiness, we have transcended the world. The world is now a place to enjoy, and we will no longer being run by it. We are no longer at the effect of it. When we utilize these techniques of relinquishing the negative and surrendering resistance to the positive, sooner or later, we come into a sudden comprehensive awareness of our true dimension. Once this has been experienced, it will never be forgotten. That is a fact. The world will never intimidate us again as it once did. There may be continued compliance with the ways of the world out of sheer habit, but the inner driveness, the inner vulnerability, and the inner doubt is now gone. Outwardly, the behavior may appear the same, but inwardly, the causes for it are now totally different. The end result of the conscious handling of emotions is invulnerability and perturbability. There it is, imperturbability. Okay. Our inner nature is now bulletproof. We are able to go through life with balance and grace. That was good. That was good. That was really, really good. And it spoke to areas of myself for sure. I definitely look through a reflective lens when I'm reading, even if it's collective. But at the same time, um, just seeing, especially in the field that I'm in psychology and therapy and things like that, just to see, because I myself have walked people through this journey of letting go, by simply allowing the feeling. Don't try to run it off. Don't try to avoid it. Allow so that you can get down to and dissect this feeling. Why am I feeling this? What is hurting? What is angry? Where is the anger? What am I angry about? Get down to the bottom of it. You have to feel it in order to dissect it. And this is hard for people. This is hard. This is hard. Avoidance has become a way of life in some cases, um, but there's a freedom on the other side like no other. This I know for a fact within my own self. Letting go, letting go, letting go, releasing. Because for how long? Like he asked, how long? I understand you have a right to be upset, angry, all of those things. Yes, the person did it. Sure, right. But for how long are you going to sit and be angry? Those two brothers that he mentioned in the book, in that chapter, went 23 years of no contact because they argued over some tennis shoes. You know what I'm saying? The price that you pay for holding on to things, the price that you pay, it's a great one. It is a huge price, whether it's something outwardly or something inside of you, your physical being, there's a huge price that you pay, you know, when we can just be free. And we are the ones that grants us the permission to do so because freedom is already there. The choices are there. Either you're going to choose to hate or you're going to choose to forgive, whichever one. The choices are always instant by instant. The choices are presented to us moment by moment. Am I going to eat that greasy burger or am I going to eat a salad? That's a choice. In that instant, you have to make a choice. But also, while considering the choices, consider the outcomes and the consequences on both sides, right? Do some thinking. And that's exactly what, what we do, what we have to do every day. We don't realize we're doing this, but we absolutely are. We're pretty much curating our life. We're creating our life by the choices that we make, whether it is to free ourselves or to hold on, free other people or hold on to them, So that's what is the term. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. Alrighty, that is the end of today's chapter, you all. The next chapter on Sunday that we'll be reading collectively is chapter 4, Apathy and Depression. Apathy and Depression. These are some good chapters, you all. I'm telling you, whether you're dealing with this currently now or not, right? Just familiarize yourself with this act of letting go. The technique of letting go, I can guarantee you something in this book is going to resonate with you. You better believe if you're telling the truth, if you're owning and telling the truth, being transparent and honest with self. Honest. Iyanla says, check your hair, HAIR. If you're being honest with yourself, if you're being accountable to yourself and for yourself, if you're being, operating in integrity, or and being responsible for yourself, then you will find yourself inside of these writings for sure. Okay. Because yes, we are growing, yes, we are healing, yes, we are maneuvering, we're expanding, we're releasing, we're maturing, all of those things, but there are still some things. There are still things 100% that we need to release. And so grant yourself the permission to release it. All right. We are early on in this book, you all. We're just finishing chapter 3. All right. So go ahead, and if you need the book, reach out to me and get the book. Okay. You can send me an email. You can send me a message wherever you're listening from. Send me a message and I'll send me your email address and I'll send it over to you right away. You can email me at info@biancamissblee.com. Okay. That is info@biancamissblee.com. Visit my website, you all. It is biancamissblee.com. On Clubhouse is above my head. Everywhere else is on the screen or in my captions and my bio. Wherever you see me, you'll see all of my information. Follow me on social media as well: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of the things. Dr. Bianca Miss Lee. Okay. You all, we will see you back here on Sunday. You already know I don't like to keep you. I don't like to keep you on Tuesday nights at all because it is your evening. Okay. So get back to your family, get back to yourselves, get back to your evening and all of those things. Okay. And we'll be back here on Sunday at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right here at Divine Femininity United. I love you. I mean it. There's absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. We'll see you on Sunday. Peace.